Jaz Kaner, Waikiki Beach, home of modern surfing. I've got some moves here I've been working on for 20 years now, developing this special style of surfing that I have for the upcoming Olympics. Let's take a look. Got that washboard stomach going on. See, check that out. Look at that. Yeah. Well, it's on the spin cycle right now. You know, but oh yeah, the chicks dig me now, huh? You want to come back to my place? Sure, it looks stupid, but it keeps the flies away, you know?
Yeah, that was... Welcome to Taiwan, Jazz. Okay.
Jaz Kaner,
Yes.
what a great opportunity to be able to sit down with yourself all the way over from California.
I sit down with myself more often than not.
And we're here in the vast surf shop in downtown Taiwan. We've just completed a rather epic trip around this beautiful island, getting to experience some of the best nature, some of the best surfing, some of the best food.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how diverse from region to region or, you know, town to town, Taiwanese people are in so many ways, right?
You know, my gut response from the first trip 10 years ago was I remembered a lot of concrete and smoky water, like muddy water, given that we were on a tour bus at the time. So we had to stay on the main highway and there weren't as many off-roads. And the driver, even at that, was going nuts. I think Sam tells a story about talking the driver off the cliff several times, you know, but he did a great job. This trip, this place strikes me so much like Polynesia, like the tropics. It's lush, it's green, we got lots of rain. And yeah, like you say, the people, you know, you feel safe here, you know.
Very welcoming, very hospitable. And,
Yeah.
you know, even in the surf, I think it was at Tainan where we were all in the water, longboard wave. Everyone was like shouting, party wave. It's a really chill, mellow, welcoming, aloha spirit, basically.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way I felt.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
And I've met a few people that were expats and they moved here and, you know, the light's going on. I think Sam wants me to move here now.
But before we get onto your surf school, the Banzai Surf School, and we're going to leave all the links down below. Before we get to that, let's talk about, because not so much a hidden secret, but for many, many years, for a couple decades, you were on the road across America as, wait for it,
stand-up comic. Darn, now I've outed myself.
Take a bow.
Boy, where do you start with that? I was a musician before that. I've never had a real job. I was a musician. I was a lifeguard. And the music sort of morphed into the stand-up comedy thing in the early 80s. I started off in my hometown of Honolulu. I started off at the Don Ho show, and he was very generous and nice. And I know lots of people that are old and forgotten. But I started off there doing little local gigs around the islands, I met Jay Leno at a comedy club there, and he says, hey, yeah, you got to go to LA, you know, you got to. So I went to LA. Actually, I went to San Francisco first and kind of groomed my act in the clubs there. And then I went on the road. I was not a big name, honestly, but people know that already. I'm a well-kept secret in show business. I was a road comic for the most part. I did a few TV shows. I did like MTV Fox. You know, everybody had a little comedy show now. I did one movie that I'd rather not, it's not worth mentioning. And I got checks for years for that movie, like royalty checks, just a nagging reminder. Look who you could have been.
Come on, tell us what the movie is called.
Okay, it was The Adventures of Ford Fairlane with Andrew Dice Clay, 1988. And it just kind of, and they cut my part out, but my name is still in the credits, you know, go figure. So
there we go.
A lot of road work.
Spent some time with the great Robin Williams.
I did in San Francisco. Robin hung out with, he was just one of the crew. You know, this was after he got Mork and Mindy, big TV show. He lost Mork and Mindy, came back up to the Bay Area, hung out with us. And, you know, he was very recognizable, of course, but you could always just sit down and talk with him. He was just He was a Zen master, and just the quickest. He was a big inspiration for me, just trying to, keep up with him and stuff. Yeah, worked with him and met, Jerry Seinfeld. Worked with Jay Leno, like I said, a couple of times. Oh, I don't know, lots of people that are old and, like me.
You may be aged, but I won't say the word OLD. But you're young at heart, and you've shown your youthfulness on this trip. You've shown your wantonness to stay sort of young and up for.
Yeah.
Your froth levels are just as high as anyone else that were on this trip.
Yeah, I'm still a surfer, and when you're driving down the road and you see that point break, oh, stop here,
Yeah.
And that was like the other thing on the bus. When we were on the bus tour, everybody was, oh, we'd see this spot going by, and the bus driver couldn't pull off on a little dirt road, But yeah, surfing. I think you have to be an optimist, to be a surfer. You sit out there and the next wave's always going to be the better one,
When did your surfing journey begin?
I was 12 years old when we moved to Honolulu, 1967. I'm not dating myself, am I? And I didn't waste any time getting in the water. Waikiki, I did that whole thing. Got in with the local crew real quick, and I was always kind of a fish out of water anyway. My dad was military. Prior to that, growing up, we had lived in like 6 different countries. I'd lived in Libya, Africa, when I was very young. Went back to Connecticut, went to Okinawa for 4 years, which I really liked, and I went back years later, saw it again. Okinawa in the early 60s, New Hampshire for 2 years up on the East Coast. And then my mom said, I've had enough of this. We're going to Hawaii. And it was really kind of impetuous, 6 kids, and we're going to Hawaii. And we had a couple friends there, but, it's taken that leap and moved into a very Asian, Polynesian neighborhood where I sort of had to, make friends or develop a sense of humor as my defense. So I was one of 5 white kids at my intermediate school, went to school barefooted, like they say. It was a real eye-opener. And I essentially grew up as a minority, and that sort of gives me a respect for the other side of color games, wherever you see them. And I know what it's like to be disliked for the color of your skin, you should say.
So by the time you'd moved to Hawaii at the age of 12, it seems to me you'd been well-traveled already due to, I dare say, your father's occupation, which took him to these far-flung destinations. And so by the time you got to Hawaii, you had already been immersed and exposed to quite a few different cultures, really. I mean, from an African culture in Libya, did you say, or Liberia?
Libya, Tripoli, Libya, on the coast of the Mediterranean.
There we go.
So
if you go from that environment to Japan, it's like, it really is chalk and cheese, for want of a better expression. And then from there to Connecticut, and then to Hawaii.
New Hampshire,
then Hawaii. Wow, all by the age of 12.
Yeah.
Very fortunate, really, to have been exposed.
Yeah, I think so.
At that young age.
Yeah, I think it gives you a better worldview.
Do you think that gave you more of a sort of like tolerant, more of a like fortitude to kind of be more understanding of the environment when you were in Hawaii, and being very aware of the fact that you were the haole?
I was the haole. Yeah.
Do you think it gave you a little bit more
resilience?
There we go. Did it give you perspective and resilience to being made to feel sort of an outsider?
Yeah, and I will say that I buddied up with the locals real quick, had my own crew, a lot of people I'm still in touch with. And when I was with my buddies, my little tribe, my brown crew, it was okay. Everybody knew who I was. When I was out on my own, I could have been any tourist or whatever, and yeah, that's where you had to be, the good haole. I thought of either a book or a movie idea where you flip back the clock and you fix situations that you were too timid or not quick enough to fix. And there were times, when you're, pushed into a corner and you just wish you could have opened up a can of kung fu whoop ass, Never did. Yeah. Well, okay, once in the 8th grade. And then years later when I was working, like I said, I was a club comic. I was booked up in Seattle at a comedy club. And the day before the gig, the club owner calls me up and we get in an argument on the phone and he says, well, then I guess you don't want to work. And he hangs up on me. I go, fuck, I already paid for a plane ticket so that I'm out a week of work starting tomorrow and a plane ticket. What can I do? What can I do? Okay, so I started, this was back, if you remember the days before cell phones, there was no caller ID. Got on the phone, called their reservation line. I started calling in different voices, yeah, this is Grant Ashley. I've got a company party coming in, and you've got Jaz Kaner there this week, correct? And because I'm like, I knew that he would just plug in any road comic. I could have lost the gig, so I had to draw, a following.
So you created your own fan base.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So I called the reservation line. Yeah, we'd like to bring in 20 of our best employees for Thursday night show, blah, blah, blah. All right, okay, click. And okay, who can I do next? And maybe I'll do yeah, we have a party of 6 for Jaz Kaner. Name is Jeffrey Goldblum. No, I didn't do Jeffrey Goldblum. That would have been too easy to get. It was much more believable if I was, Bucky Chinlock. Yeah, we had 8 people. Jaz Kaner, now don't pull a switcheroo on me. Last time I came to your club, you had a different comedian than the one we thought we was going to see, and he was from New York, and he wasn't funny at all. So Jaz Kaner, putting that in. So I did this for about like a half dozen calls. And then sure enough, like 2 hours later, the phone rings and it's the club owner. He goes, hey, Jaz, maybe we could work something out.
Look at that.
They had a lot of no-shows that week. Jeffrey Goldblum never showed up,
Wow, that is a very clever thing to have done. I'm trying to connect it to how it would translate today. And it's basically like having an Instagram account. And all of a sudden you've got this like community of followers. And like people's perception of you is very different if you have a huge amount of followers.
Right.
A large following. And that's effectively what you were doing pre-Instagram days. You were creating a community that really didn't exist, but in doing so, ensured you had employment.
Yeah. Late 70s, still landlines. I parked my car at a gig. I was doing a music gig, parked it at a hotel in the wrong place. I was stupid, got towed away, and I was fuming. That's $200 or it's a few $100 to pay the tow fee. So I get the address of the tow place, and I don't even have cab fare. I'm walking across town, starts raining. I pop into a phone booth. Remember phone booths? Mm-hmm. I pop into a phone booth, and I used my favorite voice. Yeah, this is Grant Ashley at the Waikiki Shirt. We mistakenly had a client towed away tonight. I'd like to cover the cost of that. If you could just mail me the invoice to Waikiki Sheraton, and I'm reading it out of the yellow pages in the phone book, and taking off, and a half hour later, I walk into the tow place. The guys are in the middle of a big card game. They're not paying. Throws me the keys. Yeah, the guy gonna take care of it. Throws me keys, and I drove away. Somewhere in Kalihi, someone's still looking for me.
You had all the tricks in the book. But let's go back to so how long did you stay in Hawaii from the age of 12?
From 12 till I left doing stand-up, and when I was in my late, almost 30, I was 20, I was 82 or 83, yeah. And I went on the road for many years, more longer than I should have, because it was paying well. I went from the clubs to the college gigs in the late 80s, early 90s, to the cruise ships, which I didn't like at all. Casinos. Yeah, things were just sort of, and at that point I was sort of like I was losing the passion for it,
Well, 20 years is a long time to be on the road, right?
Yeah.
And in this time, had you met your wife?
Yeah, I met her in the 80s, got married. We've got 3 kids.
Still together?
Still together.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah. As long as I don't buy another boat.
You won't buy another boat.
There's more to that story than
Mrs. Kaner.
Sorry about the boat.
Multiple boat. More than one.
Yeah,
he's got a few boats.
I look at boats now like I do surfboards. I look at the lines and the history and what it is, and it's become, it was a natural progression, I think.
So surfing Hawaii, living in Honolulu.
Yep.
You couldn't ask for a better surf destination.
Yeah.
in terms of the amount of waves that you get and the amount of surf spots. Is that where you spent most of your time surfing? Around that sort of the South Shore, Ala Moana bowls and...
Yep. I was mostly a town guy. I actually have a movie. Maybe we could put it in the link.
Yes.
I have a movie that I shot on 8mm film in 1972. I was in high school. I got stitches. I took a fin to the head, and I couldn't get in the water for 10 days. And I said, well, I'll just shoot my friends surfing. And that movie has become sort of a documentary of that period. Like, it's like now it's like some kind of historical document, So I had it digitized and put a soundtrack on it. And at the time, it was just a party film. We would take it to everybody wanted people I didn't know would, hey, we want to take your film to this party. Okay. And they'd put it up on the screen, hoot and holler, Yeah. Maybe I could have been Spielberg. Who knows?
Any other funny stories from the road that you can...
That's sweet.
besides you calling up and creating your own
fake audience, making trouble. These are so many. Oh, I'll tell you what. The surfing crossed over with the comedy. Somewhere. No, I was always surfing, but I started night surfing at Malibu in California. Malibu is probably the best wave on the West Coast, but during the day, there's 150 people out there. It's stupid, So I said, I'll come back at night. So I got into this rhythm where, and this was late 80s into the 90s, I would go to the Comedy Store, I'd do my set in the main room, 15 minutes, hang out, talk. I'd have my board and stuff in my car. And then I'd get in my car around midnight and drive down Sunset Boulevard, down to the Coast Highway, paddle out in Malibu. And this was mostly on full moons, full quarter of the moon. Paddle out at midnight and just surf till my arms were rubber, with maybe 5 other guys out. Hopefully, this is what's funny about that, is that you don't normally pull up at Malibu, geez, I hope someone's out there. But in the middle of the day, I didn't want to go out there by myself. I had done that too, but there were usually a handful of guys out, and some of them were regulars. And to this day, I wouldn't recognize them on the street, but just their voice in the darkness. Hey, dude.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a buddy of mine, Pat Hannafin, that was also a comedian, and he had owned a surf shop in Huntington, and we had the similar history. And we were developing headlights. Like, I was on a first name basis at Radio Shack with these guys, like trying to solder different things together, and this was before LED light. It wasn't that efficient.
Yeah,
I had a battery pack that I'd stuff in my wetsuit, and a welder's rig with 2 lights.
Classic.
Yeah.
All in the name of trying to escape crowds and surf.
Yeah. Always wear a glow stick if you're gonna surf at night. I can say that, because it's easy to get run over. But you would think it's difficult, but the beauty of like Malibu, for one thing, it's a machine. It's just a perfect right. And on a big night, you could see the whitewater coming down the point, and you could kind of dial in the takeoff area. The takeoff was a hard one because you just had this black thing coming at you, but you could kind of dial it in, looking where the whitewater is. And once you're on the wave, though, the wave is concave. There's a few lights on the pier and on the highway that reflect off the wave, and you can pretty much see what you're doing, And it's just big slabs would come down. You'd have enough, take a high line, do another one, another high line. Sometimes the glow plankton was out there at night, and you'd be like paddling in mercury with it coming off your fingers. And if you were lucky, you could get a glow barrel.
Phosphorus.
Yeah.
Phosphorescent.
The phosphorescent plankton. Yeah.
Plankton. Amazing.
The seals would scare the shit out of you. You'd be paddling and you'd hear, like, right behind you. They were like they were friendly at night, come up behind you.
Classic. We had a nighttime surfing competition in Durban a few times. It was like a actual surf contest, and it was touted as nighttime surfing.
And you
was with floodlights on the way.
And you weren't too concerned about the sharkies?
Oh, well, they had like guys in the water on skis and that sort of thing.
Yeah, because I know Durban, that area is more, Malibu's fairly tame. I always had the image of a shark coming in, though, through the glow plankton, and you would just see this trail. You'd be able to follow them.
When did you decide to settle down in Huntington?
Well, actually, I live in Long Beach. The business is in Huntington.
Okay.
I'm a half hour away in Long Beach. We had gone back to Hawaii in the early 90s. My kids, my first one was 3 or 4 years old. My second one was on the way. He was born in Hawaii, Patrick Kanoa.
Okay.
They all have Hawaiian middle names. And we moved back for a year, and it was just a struggle to try and make it there, especially I was flying back and doing college shows at the time. I remember doing one show flying from Honolulu to Bangor, Maine to do a college show and then back. So, the college was paid well, but I didn't, I was jet lagged constantly. And my wife wanted to finish her college at Long Beach State. So we went back, and we've been there ever since. And I don't have any college background or degree or anything. So I was sort of, I was writing, I was trying to do screenplays. I wrote for Surfer Magazine for a few years back in the day. And there is some writing on my website, jazzkaner.com. I just didn't want to go out and get a full-time job for minimum wage because so it was hard to give up the comedy thing, until I struck on the idea of doing surf lessons, and that was in the 2000s, and that sort of evolved into the surf school that opened in 2010. So we're going on 15 years now at Banzai.
Wow.
Yep. And my son is taking it over, and I'm supposed to be retired.
So well-established surf school. It's quite interesting. We visited the Wavestorm,
The Global warehouse. That was a real pleasure meeting John finally, because I had emailed him when we first opened. I had traded, not so much that, we've bought hundreds of boards from him, but I'm just another customer. But I gave him, I'd like to think I gave him some good intel on how to design a softboard and what we were looking for. And it was, plenty of rocker in the nose, plenty in the tail to keep the nose out of the water, lots of width. So I'm going to plug Agit now. The SSR series that they have now is our go-to board. It's 8-9 feet. It's super wide. It's got a handle. They're almost indestructible, which is good quality in a beginner board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got 40 or 50 of them.
Wow.
At the shop.
Over the years, you must have been quite a big supporter of Wavestorm. You mentioned the other day a few hundred, thousands maybe.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
Which is great. And the fact that you've been able to give them feedback.
Yeah.
Essentially, you've helped in the development of the newer boards that we were fortunate enough to not sort of be exposed to on this trip, which was quite cool as well.
Yeah, it really is important. And when you're learning to have something big and floaty, that's rule one: small wave, big board, not the other way around.
So 15 years you've had Banzai.
Yep.
You've had thousands of people come through your doors, wanting to learn to surf.
Yeah.
Have we seen an exponential rise in the focus on surfing and wanting to get in the water and try surfing during the recent COVID period?
I think we have. Yeah, COVID. Actually, we've taken a little dent from COVID because people, it seems like they're not traveling as much. And we used to get a lot of international people. I knew the basics of surf, like, at least hello and thank you and stand up and do it like this, comme ci, comme ça in French, and that has sort of dropped off. But there's just, surfing is, as the Beach Boys said, surfing's getting bigger all around the world, Hawaii to the shores of Peru.
I heard a rumor that, speaking about the Beach Boys, I heard a rumor that they really only took off nationally in the USA when they started singing about like deuce scoops and cars, and because then they kind of connected with the Middle America as opposed to just the surf community.
Not sure. I think that's true. And I actually opened for the Beach Boys a couple times, and the only surfer in that group is, forgive me, I forget his name. He's a beach boy.
Okay. So they were called the Beach Boys, but there was only one surfer.
There were maybe a couple.
Okay.
They at the time. Yeah, but now they're up in the years. They're the beach men, as they like to say.
Oh, really? Do they call themselves the Beach Men?
Yeah, they have a good sense of humor about themselves. Yeah.
So Banzai Surf School, we're going to leave all the links down below. What's next for Jaz Kaner?
What is next? Well, let's see. I'll be 70 next summer.
You wouldn't say it.
Yeah. Well,
What I really appreciated about you on this trip, Jazz, is your general positivity and stoke on life, and just your ability to just go with the flow, and kind of very, very friendly chap. And like, I appreciated getting to know you on this
thanks too much. Yeah, it means more coming from you. Yeah, like I said, I think you have to be an optimist to be a surfer, and you have to deal with variables. That's one of the things that I tell people that come to the surf school. That is a funny story. I had a guy, we've had so many funny customers, but one guy kept asking about just weird questions about the board and standing up. And I could tell he was trying to work out the math in his head. And I said, "Are you an engineer?" He says, "Oh, yes, I'm sorry." Indian guy.
Yes.
And I laughed and I said, you can't do this with math. There's too many variables. You got to get in the water. You got to practice. You got to learn the ocean. And it's always going to be something different coming at you, So I think maybe I'd like to think that's sort of bled over into my life, spilled over. And what's next for Jaz Kaner? I had an idea of getting on this sailboat of mine and going down to Mexico. And what I'm finding though is I've been sailing solo, and my love of sailing is on a collision course with my love of sleeping. Because when you're solo, it's, when are you going to sleep? You got to watch where you're going. So I'm not sure where that's going. I may have to, I'm looking for crew.
Well, what's your wife's name?
Leslie.
Leslie.
Yeah.
Was looking for crew.
And she's sailed with me a couple times. All my kids have. We've been back and forth to Catalina and stuff. She's got a real job. She's younger than me. She's the one pulling down the nut at the house, and I love her for that,
Special lady.
Yeah.
Special lady. And congratulations for just staying with this dude.
Yeah, Leslie, putting up with me. Yeah, and the night surfing, I gotta say, there were a couple times I came home at 5, 6 a.m. The sun's coming up. But one night I came home because I went back out. It was so good. I said, I had to go back. And she said, "My God, I thought you were dead or something."
Yeah, because of course there's no such thing as WhatsApp or telephones, and you just be like, I'm going to the comedy club, might go for a surf, and then you just rock up at sunrise.
Yeah.
And she just rolled with the punches.
Yeah, and all my kids surf and play music. I raised surfing hippies, so I don't know what that does for the budget, but there they are.
I think you've carried that spirit of how you were raised from a young age, being exposed to cultures and alternative lifestyles, essentially, and you've carried that through in how you've brought your family up and what you've tried to instill in them. We haven't even really touched on this, but Jaz is also Jaz is also a musician, guitarist, right?
Yeah.
Only instrument that you play, guitar?
Play guitar, play a little bit of keyboard. I actually played bass professionally, and guitar is what I call my mother instrument. I love bass, but it's an ensemble. I really need a drummer at least to make the bass thing work, and make it palatable. So I went back to guitar more recently, and I kind of switch off. My favorite thing to do is jam with my two sons. They're both great musicians, and we put a little trio thing together and just create,
Amazing.
And I love that. Yeah.
Should have brought your guitar with. I would have had you like jam something. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like, what does like the ocean and surfing mean to you throughout your life?
Oh, wow. It's been such a big part of me. And that's why I say the sailing was just the natural evolution of things. I don't mind being out on the water for days at a time. And wow, it grounds me, And even my wife sees this. She'll say, you need to go surf when I'm like having a pissy day. You need to go surfing. You need to get in the water. And it's so true. I come back and then, I don't know what it is. We talked about the electrical thing. I think there's something electrical. going on when you get in the ocean that just, what is it? The ions,
Electrolytes.
the electrolytes, ions, positive, negative. There's some science with that now where you walk barefoot across the grass and you're connected to the earth. And I think it's even more so in the ocean.
Yeah, I think you've described it beautifully. So what it was said this in a film, but like Ponce de Leon was searching for the fountain of youth, and all he had to do, I think it was Skip Fry said this, all he had to do is like jump over the board.
What's funny about a lot of those guys is like they didn't know how to swim. Captain Cook, Captain James Cook, who discovered the whole Pacific and the Hawaiian island, he didn't know how to swim.
Crazy. Would you agree with that? Would you say that it's the fountain of youth, the ocean? Has it kept you young?
Yeah, it has in many ways. I think when I work out, I don't work out. I'm going to sound like I'm some kind of buff workout guy. I'm not. But like for this trip, I dropped a few pounds. I fasted a little bit. I'm pretty much whole plant food. If I have one sermon to give, it's plant food. But I do it all so I can surf, so I can get in the ocean. And then the ocean is, it pays off there. Yeah.
Keeping moving.
Yeah.
The minute you stop moving.
Yeah. And
if we have a 20-year friendship tour, that means you're going to be pretty much close on 80 or 80.
Yeah.
But I'd like to ask you what your relationship is with Sam and the Vast team.
Sam came to us 10 or 12 years ago. He said, I own a surfwear company. This is how he introduced himself. I own a surfwear company. I should know how to surf. I go, yes, you should. So he signed up for a package of lessons with him and one of the other Vast people who's now, gone. But, and he was a great customer, and we got to know each other, well. And through that whole process, in the middle of it, he says, well, we're doing a surf trip to Taiwan next month. And I go, surfing in Taiwan? I go, oh. And he goes, yeah, there's surf there. Yeah. And then he asked if I wanted to come. And I said, well, yeah, I'm up for that. And, ever since then, he's just so generous. And the fact that I came back on this trip, that he invited me on this, because I had a sailing trip lined up back in LA. I thought, no, I'll do the Taiwan thing again. I'll be the old man of the sea on this trip. I'm okay with that.
Well, as I've already said, you were young at heart, just as up for fun and games, and have been a great sort of character and personality on the trip. And
thank you, man.
It's been really cool to get to know you. And we've got to say thanks to Sam and his team, Ada and Kerry and everyone, for just basically looking after everyone. It's been a challenging thing to have to put all, like, from a logistics point of view.
Bring everyone such together. A great job of it, just the organization.
For sure.
The rooms and everything, how we all sort of rotated around. Found what worked, the cars, And
with so many diverse personalities coming from so many different backgrounds, and they're like coming together. And so we say thank you for that.
I don't know if I'll be back at 80. Don't know if I felt old on this. I think I've got 20 years on everyone else.
Well, that's why this trip has been such a momentous occasion, I think, for yourself, and this conversation, being able to sit down and have a chat with you. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
And I know we've only just scratched the surface of the Jaz Kaner iceberg that is your life.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to condense and put a man who's led such an interesting and diverse life from a very young age into a sort of 45-minute conversation. But Jaz Kaner, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. Thank you very much. And from the Vast Lives podcast team, we say thank you. Have a pleasant journey back to California, the Republic of. And I'll see you in California, hopefully. And we'll break some bread there, and maybe a round 2 of the podcast where we can delve even further into the life of the Jazz.
You're going to come on the Mexico trip.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
We're going to leave all the links down below for the Banzai Surf School. If you're anywhere near Huntington, please look up Banzai Surf School. They're great. Get your family into the water. Just go and say hello. Follow them on Instagram. give them some love. I'm Steve Shooter. This is Jaz Kaner. We're out.